Welcome back to another Deeper Dig Conversation Series, episode 41. Today we are out here in beautiful, sunny San Francisco. Baillie, I'm so happy to have you on. I've been a massive fan of everything that you've been building at PROWL and just how you've been able to really elevate yourself as a creative. So welcome on.
Thank you so much for having me. Pumped to be here.
It's a pleasure. So the first question I always like to ask someone is, how will you describe yourself as a creative? I feel like you're someone that's very well versed, that's showcased across your work, but how will you describe yourself as a creative?
Such an existential question, but I would describe myself as a materials obsessed, research first industrial designer who's combining sort of my craft of developing products with my passion for environmental impact. And I think for anyone who doesn't know what industrial design is, I like to describe it as the intersection between art and engineering. I think at the core of industrial design, it's really about like creative problem solving. And I think what a superpower for an industrial designer is really connecting a lot of different dots. So working with a huge list of constraints, whether it's, consumer research and marketing, engineering constraints, how something could be manufactured, the capabilities of material you might be working with, and translating that into some concise, physical, tangible solution. The last 4+ years, as you mentioned, I've been running a studio called PROWL, which is really focused on product development for a huge, wide sector of industries, from automotive, furniture, lighting, but all with the lens of sustainability and kind of a material being kind of at the core of that.
Yeah, and absolutely love to hear the story about how exactly PROWL got started. Like, what was the first initiative for you to be like, okay, I really want to start this next journey and just kind of push my storytelling on far as that approach?
Yeah, totally. Well, my first passion actually was furniture. And when I got started in my career, I met my business partner, Lauryn, working for a furniture company called Cove. And, at the time, in Cove, which is a sub-brand of a huge commercial furniture company called Steelcase, we were really spending our time in-house as designers there, kind of honing our skills, learning how to work with a lot of different groups of people, researchers, engineers, marketers, manufacturers. And while her and I's careers kind of deviated after that, we always, I think our bond, both personally and professionally, really, the foundation was laid there. And we always talked about the what ifs and one days of like running a studio together. And at the time, it was really, I think, rooted in being women in the field of industrial design. Females are representing a growing percentage in this industry, but it's still really low comparison to sort of the male-dominated. And so we really thought that was like our shtick, at the time. But through sort of a decade of us kind of working in our careers, we witnessed just waste and toxicity of how we're developing goods. For me, it was just endless plastic and dumpsters of prototypes that didn't quite pass quality. For her, it was going into factories and just seeing, really toxic materials and fumes and poor human health. And I think it was just sort of exposure over the course of our careers that was like, oh my God, we need to do something about this. And we feel a calling for this, grappling with the environmental impact of our industry of just making stuff. And it really it really came from bearing witness to sort of the negative sides of being in an industry that makes stuff for a living.
And what was so interesting is like the fact that it's like women led. I think that's such a key factor. I look at people such as Nicole at Level and just, like what does that mean for you, just, embracing that leadership role and really placing the emphasis on impact into the work that you do?
Yeah, it's funny because I just told the story as sort of how important it was to be a female-led studio. And while I think that still remains an important part of our present-day marketing, we struggle completely with, do we hyper-focus on that and highlight the fact that it's novel? Or is it actually just our impact-driven work is what should define us more than the leadership? It's kind of this, I don't know, we kind of go back and forth, but I think that just for us, the importance of the impact side is trying to elevate it beyond just being sort of like an altruistic, just feel good pursuit, is really match it with solid business cases, and that sustainability isn't a nice to have, and here are actually the ways it supports business and making products that sell. And I think it's too often considered sort of the icing on the cake, and maybe we'll get there, maybe we'll add a healthier material into the process, instead of saying, no, if we do it this way, it has business metric benefits, whether that's financial, whether that's marketing, something that can sort of equate to business capitalism as we know it today in the US. So yeah, I think it's really important for us to take it beyond just something that makes us feel good and matches where our passion is, and marrying that with just real tactical business cases.
That's awesome. And within that, what have been some projects that you guys worked on recently that you feel like you're very proud of?
I'd say one that's really recent is a lighting collection we launched with a furniture brand called Hayworth. What was so cool about that project is we, as a studio, had history working with Bay Area-based manufacturer Gantri, which is using 3D printing, which is historically known as just a prototyping tool. It's not it doesn't have merit in sort of mass manufacturing. Gantri's kind of flipped that on its head, and they now own the world's largest 3D print farm, and they're using plant-based materials to 3D print on-demand lighting. So they're cutting down waste. They're printing only what's needed when needed with healthier materials that break down at the end of their life. Taking that manufacturing prowess and then adopting it for a brand like Hayworth that has a market that is buying, thousands of products for commercial interiors and residential. It's just a great opportunity to sort of have this trifecta, the brand, the design, and the ethos matched with the manufacturing to make it happen. I feel like it really was just a great example of sort of building that business case and that market applicable solution at the end of the day. I think what we're most known for is a chair we developed called PROWL. And for now, that has kind of sat as a speculative project, which is really meaningful for us still because it represents how we think. It acts as a kind of a marketing example for our studio, but we're really still hungry to find the next level of commercializing it with a brand and actually bringing it to life more than just a concept in an exhibition.
And you personally, and we were talking about this off camera, but I mentioned, I get inspired by PBS Kids. And one of the things that I'm curious about is, you mentioned a lot about the impact that you have within your work, but from a technical standpoint, do you feel like when you were first starting PROWL, or just in general, you as a creative, were there any influences or anyone that you feel okay, I see this person doing this, I feel like, I get inspired by this type of framing?
I think when we started PROWL, I don't really remember any one studio or designer or that was okay, we want to be like that. But during the course of PROWL, it's funny. It's less other studios or other designers that while of course I'm still inspired by sort of the breadth of work that people are working on and the concepts people are focusing on. I feel like I'm inspired by other sectors, whether it's energy or material scientists. We go to a lot of material libraries to help influence sort of our material expertise, knowing how we can source and specify materials that fit with our ethos. Places like Material Connection, Brain of Materials. It's like people who are really trying to make information more accessible and communicate what can be really complicated themes, especially within sustainability or, measuring carbon, all this like data-driven side that's not something designers often think of having to communicate. It's like I'm drawing inspiration for that to help aid our storytelling.
And you probably already know, but April is Earth Day coming up on the 22nd.
Woo.
And one of the things I'm curious about is, when I come across environment, I mean, I care a lot about it. I care about recycling, how much electricity I'm using. But one of the things that I feel like is so challenging about it is just how much there's a lot of information out there about learning about how exactly to, mind how much you're utilizing with electricity and things that affect our environment. But, for those that aren't as informed, what do you feel like are some important key things that you should do as far as like just helping out our environment? Educational moment right here.
I'll try to think of sort of succinct options.
Recycling.
I think the complexity, and I think why it's so overwhelming for consumers is, yes, we have more information than we've ever had as a society. We can, access kind of any information we want. And why I think that can cause a lot of confusion, especially if you don't know where to look. I'm trying to think of sort of like what is like one thing. I mean, as someone who's continuing to make stuff, I think intentional consumption, sort of a mindset shift, is sort of a foundational element to what I would sort of urge consumers to think. It's like, do you really need that thing? How long can you use the thing after you buy it? Do you know where it will go when you're done with it? Just that thinking alone has major impacts. As a studio, we focus heavily on the end of life. So what we refer to as sort of like when you dispose of a thing and what happens to it. Our studio ethos is we begin with the end. Sort of just like a methodology and a philosophy we take each project with. And so with that, I think acting responsibly with how you dispose of your things, educating yourself on sort of how, can it be recycled? Can it be composted? Do you have access to those things where you are? Places like, we have here in the Bay Area Recology, which is our municipal waste system, actually kind of all up and down the West Coast. And they have amazing resources on their website for kind of how to tackle different types of products. And I'd recommend even those nationally or internationally to take a look at what they're doing.
And just speaking about the Bay Area, being based in the Bay Area, the company being based in the Bay Area, how much does that carry an impact and carry an importance of, your work just being based out here?
Oh, so much. I think on one hand, being in a place that is so rooted in just innovation, just sort of the legacy of Silicon Valley, I think that in and of itself is inspiring, to just be in this hotbed of creative thinkers and problem solvers across, a ton of different industries. And like, here we are right now looking at the Bay, which just reminds us all the natural habitat here, all the parks, the settings just are a constant reminder of what it is we're trying to work to protect and keep nice so we can keep enjoying it and coexisting with the earth. So yeah, very, very intertwined. I think it's a huge huge influence on being here and the work we do.
And I find that everyone, like I mention all the time, I find that everyone who lives in the Bay Area, they come from a place of genuine passion as a creative. Like so many creatives that I come across, like you can tell that their work actually speaks with a wide audience just because of how much they care about the work, how much they care about the passion. I think that's so important, especially in today's society, as you know.
Totally. I mean, you guys are part of that too, and just telling the stories and meeting with creatives that are pushing passionately in their respective fields. So
Thank you. And, you know, one of the things that also intrigued me, especially with this area, I mean, you just see how many like startups there are. And I think I'm definitely curious on hearing your take about how the startup industry is booming here in the Bay Area. Like, you know, how do you feel like that's important? How do you feel like that's playing an impact? I'm definitely curious on hearing that perspective as well.
just like my hot takes on startup culture. I mean, being here in San Francisco, you know, PROWL itself is not a startup traditionally, and the fact that sort of we aren't, you know, investor backed. However, we are a small creative business that is also trying to make it like so many startups. And I think the positive side of it is that we all get to just be here working hard. You can kind of like feed off that energy. And so, you know, around the corner from us right now is Y Combinator, one of the largest investment firms and incubators within the capital world. And you can kind of feel the innovation energy happening. I would say here in the Bay Area, and many, you know, a lot of people are starting to feel the effects of this, is there's such an over-indexing, hot take, on AI. And I think that it's going to play a massive role in our lives, but, you know, I'm constantly just grappling with if there can be such thing as balanced creation as far as these technologies go. I don't have a clear sort of point of view on that right now, but it's just sort of feels looming in a way that I can't quite articulate. But
No, I agree with that. And just to close it out, let's just say you have someone that's kind of want to follow in the same career path that you have. They want to be involved in industrial design. They really want to, you know, take that feeling that they have, you know, and elevate it to the next level. What do you feel like would be some advice, or what you feel like would be some just food for knowledge that you would give them?
Totally. I think those who are looking first and foremost to pursue industrial design, I think it is a growing accessibility in our education system. So if you're not already in industrial design, the opportunity to take industrial design courses or major in industrial design is going beyond just art schools, which is sort of where I started, and, you know, accessing it into state schools beyond. I think that the ability to study it as a discipline is growing. If you're already in industrial design and you want to start considering impact in your work more broadly, or really hyper focus on the environmental side, I mean, I'm biased, and this is just my passion and how we're running PROWL, but I really have conviction that materials is sort of where all the answers lie, and educating yourself on the material sciences, different types of materials, following companies like Biofabricate or the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, or newsletters from places like Material Connection really help keep you aware of materials that are being developed that can influence the work and ultimately influence the product's end of life at the end of the day.
Thank you so much for joining, Baillie. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. This was such a lovely experience.
Right, it's a Saturday, it's a sunny day, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think there was no pressure to it.
Well, it was a lot of fun, so thanks for inviting me on to participate.
Absolutely, thank you.